What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here from DataDash, and today is January 12th of 2024. Well, folks, I hope you all are having a fantastic day wherever you are, because in today's video, I think we need to spend a moment to step back, take a deep breath, and celebrate as an industry. Yesterday, history was made for Bitcoin and the broader crypto space. For the first time in history, in the United States, the Securities Exchange Commission, or SEC, greenlit nearly a dozen Bitcoin spot ETF applications, many of which had been rejected time and time again over the last decade. And now, for the first time, practically anyone can get access to Bitcoin from a brokerage account, from retail investors to high-level institutions and investment managers. So whether or not you think this is going to be good for price, which we will talk about, I'll give you guys my candid thoughts about what this event means for crypto markets going forward and what to consider. I want to spend some time to just think about the journey that got us here at this moment, and also to be candid in explaining why we were a bit skeptical of an ETF throughout most of 2023. So let's go ahead and spend some time to talk about that. Now, as some of you may very well know, we've been covering cryptocurrency markets since as far back as July of 2017. It's been nearly 6.5 years since we started the channel. And it's not only been an incredible journey, but during that period of time, I remember during the early days seeing Bitcoin rising from around $1,500 all the way up to $3,000, making for me the first 100% move I'd seen in crypto markets actively trading, and then collapsing from 3K to 1,800 and everyone freaking out, coming into the live streams and just, thinking about what does this mean for Bitcoin? But we've always been here on this channel through good times and bad, and one of the things I emphasized is that we're at the ground floor of where crypto markets are heading. And I would not believe myself if I was talking to myself back in the past and saying, Nick, one day Bitcoin will be trading at $45,800 in 2024. It's an incredible feat to see how far crypto has come during that period of time, not to mention the whole array of altcoins, further development of the technology of the crypto space. And while there's definitely areas where I've been critical and I've provided, I think, pretty quality feedback, and I think we're still trying to find where crypto stands as an industry from a technological perspective. Nonetheless, Bitcoin is definitely testing the waters to potentially become this alternative asset, and has definitely reclaimed a lot of its lost market cap throughout 2023. And whether or not 2024 is going to be a great year or not, I have to say Bitcoin's come a long way. In fact, some of you may not know, but I wrote a letter back in 2018. I decided to pull it up here for this occasion. Back in July of 2018, about a little over a year out from creating my channel, I wrote a letter at the time sharing my thoughts as to why a Bitcoin ETF should be approved. And it's interesting. I think if you read through it, you might find that there's a lot of relevant topics to today's discussion of an ETF. While there was a lot more rudimentary and complex intricacies that eventually led the SEC and Gary Gensler to actually being the deciding vote amongst 5 commissioners to passing a Bitcoin ETF, even though he's been highly critical of Bitcoin ETF applications and crypto in the past, I have to say that there's a lot of stuff in here around utilizing OTC or over-the-counter exchanges of crypto to actually mitigate a lot of the potential volatility and concerns that were originally there for a Bitcoin ETF. I think definitely many people, including myself, realized back well over 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago, that a Bitcoin ETF should not only be created, but everyone has a right to purchase a Bitcoin ETF. For the longest time, we pointed out the obvious concerns that there are so many other means of risk in traditional equities that the SEC not only approves, but rightfully allows people to trade and speculate in. And I think at the end of the day, everyone has a right, irrespective of whether or not we thought a Bitcoin ETF was likely going to happen due to regulatory pressure, or if it was going to be as big of a deal as people anticipated or not. Everyone has a right to go out there and invest in whichever assets they choose, especially something like Bitcoin that has shown for the last decade or more that it is proven that it has a fixed supply, it has a programmatic framework, and everyone can understand not only the code that operates the Bitcoin network, if you want to review the open source code and take the time to learn about it, but also that Bitcoin's rule set is established and it works. And there's not any real concern that's justifiable enough to block people from owning Bitcoin. So I rambled a good amount here. I just wanted to let you guys know that even though we had doubted it in 2023, and I don't shy away from that, and I know some people are going to hate me because I didn't believe a Bitcoin ETF was going to happen this year, at least I can say here today that we had gotten that call wrong. We've made some great calls over the years. We've also missed the ball sometimes. And this was definitely an example of one of those. But it comes from a place of trying to shout to the roof for years that something like this should get passed. Everyone should absolutely have a right to own Bitcoin in whatever way they choose. I would recommend owning it in a self-custodial manner that's more accessible to you. But at the end of the day, this is going to open it up, the floodgates, to some additional waves of liquidity. And through the IBIT ETF by iShares and BlackRock, or a whole range of other applications out there, no matter who wins, this is definitely still going to be a net positive for the crypto space if you're talking about focusing on price, because there is going to be those inflows. That being said, while it is a net positive for price, I do want to get very candid with you guys and talk about the nuance here of what a Bitcoin ETF is really going to mean for the price direction of Bitcoin. The question is, at the end of the day, not so much whether or not this is a positive thing. Of course, it's a bullish or positive thing for Bitcoin, but it doesn't mean that it's going to lead to higher prices. So let's just talk about this here, and if you guys can stick with me here. There's been a lot of mixed signals here. There are a lot of people pointing out the good and the bad with the first day of a Bitcoin ETF. Some people pointed towards the trade volume, which many people saw as a record-setting day for a new asset launching onto the market. To be fair, you had a wide range of different ticker symbols and different ETFs that people could invest in. You had, for example, IBIT or the BlackRock application taking the center stage, and a whole range of other ones like Fidelity's BTC ETF, ARK's BTC ETF, and a whole range of other ones from Bitwise and major money managers and financial product creators. Nonetheless, here, it is important to note that this spot total volume is also including GBTC. GBTC yesterday was the real winner amongst the competition, which is at the moment an exchange traded note that will likely convert here in the near term to an ETF. Nonetheless, I don't care so much about the individual trades as highlighted here, but seeing around $4 billion in spot volume on the first day is not too bad. It is important to clarify that this doesn't mean it's $4 billion of direct buying. It's $4 billion of trade volume. In the same way that if you see, for example, Bitcoin on spot markets on CoinMarketCap, seeing around $10, $20 billion in volume, it doesn't mean that there's $10 or $20 billion of new inflows. So understand that at the end of the day, this isn't a terrible number for day one, but it's also not meaning that there's $4 billion of inflows. Then you have people as well like Rand from YouTube as well, another content creator, who was pointing out that this was a terribly unsuccessful day for the ETF. The total trade was 4.6 billion, GBTC being half of that, and he had mentioned that the numbers were a majority of sale or outflows due to higher fees and all Bitcoin being locked up in GBTC. So a potential changing the guard, and really at the end of the day, a lot of that volume was people circulating potentially from one financial product to another. Look, I think that there are a lot of ways you can look at it, guys, but I'll tell you guys what I personally believe here. You guys come here for my candid opinion, and I try to always provide something that's down the middle here. I think at the end of the day, Bitcoin has priced in its ETF move to a large extent, and looking at price action, things look relatively exhausted. And I will continue to signal some of my concerns here, but also provide a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. The big thing I think you guys need to be made aware of is that there is one concern here that really gets me a bit nervous about whether or not an ETF is going to be incredibly high impact here in the near term. The volume profile we saw yesterday was okay. It wasn't a slam dunk out of the park, amazing move when it comes to new inflows into the space. But beyond that as well, there are a whole range of brokerage and banking platforms that are not allowing people to access these products. The biggest of them being Vanguard. And this sends some pretty big shock waves, considering that, with an ETF, most people thought that everyone would be able to access these products. And sure, I think rightfully so, some people are moving from one platform to another. They're speaking with their money, and I say all the more to you. Vanguard, Bank of America, or their subsidiary Merrill Lynch should not be blocking you from buying Bitcoin. That being said, while we may shout to the roof that we're switching our accounts and yada yada, Vanguard is a multi-trillion-dollar asset manager. It is up there with BlackRock as becoming one of the largest ETP managers. Vanguard manages over $8.1 trillion in assets and wealth. This is not some small fluke or small move against the ETF. This is very big when it comes to impacting the passive flows from a lot of retirement accounts who would be purchasing these Bitcoin spot ETFs for their 401k or IRA. And this is going to, again, I think, put a dent in some of that momentum to a pretty large extent. But again, from a moral basis, I'll let you guys know, I think it's totally nuts that Vanguard is doing this. There's no rhyme or reason that they should be doing something like this, because if all these other providers out there with players such as BlackRock are offering it, there is no reason as to why Vanguard can't do it. And I'm pretty sure that if I can go out there and trade 2-3x leverage oil contracts going long or short, which are going to inevitably suffer from decay and can potentially leave you losing everything if you're caught on the wrong side of the trade during a given window of time where there's enough volatility, I'm pretty sure investors on their own merit have the right to go out and purchase a Bitcoin ETF. Sorry for the ramble here and the rant, but I just gotta say that. It's totally nuts. There's no rhyme or reason why they shouldn't allow it to. Nonetheless, we may scream to the sky, grab our pitchforks and our torches, but at the end of the day, this is something that's going to probably impact the momentum to a large extent. But beyond all of that as well, guys, the biggest point here that I think you need to consider is that the biggest question mark that still remains, and I think we need more data, we need more time for these applications to be on the market, more of the information related to these products to be available in regards to their trading volume and activity, before we can really understand the big question. Is a Bitcoin ETF going to be enough? We need to be very serious here, guys. Bitcoin is coming up. It was coming back up here on being $1 trillion asset. And its price is getting back up towards ranges where we saw heavy sell side pressure in the past. So even though an ETF is going to be positive for inflows, the question is it going to be enough to outpace outflows? I'll say in the short term, this was a good day overall to start. It wasn't terrible, it wasn't phenomenal, but it was a good day for Bitcoin ETFs. We saw that there was some interest and some trading volume, but we are going to need to see sizable inflows over the next few weeks in order to really showcase that there's institutional interest in these assets. If we don't see that, with all this buildup and anticipation, with all these years, and with so much betting on this Bitcoin ETF being a success over the next few years, which yes, again, that momentum takes time to build up, but if we don't see those signs showing up here, you are likely going to see a heavy correction in Bitcoin in the near term, because it may very well be that a lot of the spot and OTC purchases of Bitcoin by a lot of these ETP product managers over the past few months in anticipation of needing to seed their ETFs when the demand supposedly will come for them, if they don't have that demand for those spot spot Bitcoin ETF shares, there's going to be some unloading. And some of these ETP product providers are not going to remain being some of the players in the market. There's not enough room for all of these ETFs out there. And as some of them start to close their doors, we're going to really start to see whether or not, as we get a concentration of some of these ETF product providers and the 1, 2, or 3 that really remain over probably the next few months to the next year, which ones are the real winners here, and whether or not in those 3 products we're really seeing the kind of inflows that are going to support Bitcoin's price. We can't rely on the halving event. The halving event is going to have a minimal effect to Bitcoin's supply-demand imbalance. It will have a positive thing, as I mentioned with the ETF. It's going to be a positive thing, but is it going to be positive enough? That's the key term. Is it going to be positive to actually continue pressing Bitcoin's price higher here, sending it to 6 figures? That's the question we should be asking here, because if it can't, then why buy Bitcoin? Like, why go long on it, right? So I'm not trying to be negative here, guys. I'm just trying to say that while I can definitely take the good with this, I think it's definitely a historic moment for crypto. That's wonderful. We also have had, from the lows, a 211% move in Bitcoin during this period of time, in anticipation of this. And that's why you do have to be cautious about buy the hype, sell the news. So considering that, I think there are a few things to watch. As we've talked about, we're going to be watching how Bitcoin, as it's likely pulling back here considering yesterday's candle, I want to see it come down here to the 21-day. And depending on how it plays out there, if we bounce off there, and we might have a continued rally here up to 52K as we kept open to. The lower range was around 48K, which we already hit. If we do not hold on that though, and we get a fade down below, a solid close below the 21-day, you're at a minimum likely coming down to the 100-day or 200-day moving average, both of which are not in crazy territory, guys. We were just here back, if we want to talk about the 100-day pocket right now, we were here in December. The 200-day pocket is where we were back in October. Wouldn't be so shocked if it turns out there's not as much demand for the ETF, or at the end of the day, you just have a cool down here where the inflows aren't enough. The big thing I want to say overall as well, guys, is now that the ETF is out there, that was the clear catalyst for people to be buying for the last few months on spot markets and driving up retail and also smaller sized institutional demand. What's going to be the new narrative, right? That's another thing to consider here. Bitcoin is now accessible to anyone in the world through practically any vertical or vehicle. And while, yes, the gold ETF did, in many people's eyes, lead towards gold becoming a much larger market, now with the Bitcoin ETF, we needed to show up to the plate here. And if that isn't enough of a narrative, then what's the investment thesis for Bitcoin going forward? Just things to consider here. Again, not trying to scream up in the sky and say sell everything. Price is still relatively strong here in regards to the reaction of the 21-day. Until that changes here, Bitcoin still remains bullish. I can't deny that. But if that starts to change, don't fall in love with your positions and start ignoring the warning signs that price is giving you. We made that mistake to a large extent in 2023 as prices were moving higher. And I would warn against you guys on the other side of the trade making the same mistake that we did in 2023. We focused a bit too much on the macro and fundamentals. And that got us, not per se burnt. We didn't lose any money. We didn't try to short Bitcoin, but we missed out on some pretty big moves. I'll say that first and foremost. You definitely don't want to get caught on the other end of the stick where you've made some phenomenal returns and you get caught up in the idea and euphoria of Bitcoin becoming the next gold overnight. That may very well happen, but it doesn't usually happen overnight. It's not going to circumvent a asset that is easily 10 to 11 times more valuable than it at current market rates as a market and has had thousands of years of history. It will likely take time for these things to happen. And if you expect it to happen overnight, if you're going in on leverage, if you're taking too much of a speculative bet, that very well may come back to bite you. And I only say that as a friend here, not because, we got 2023 wrong or anything, but just keep that in mind. As a friend here who cares about you succeeding long term and not per se making a double on your money overnight, but making consistent returns, far outpacing your losses and compounding your money over time. I don't really see how that's going to be able to happen here. You're going to need a lot of ETF inflows. You are going to need some magic wand over the next few weeks to get this to a point where we're just going to continue rallying in a parabolic fashion. There's not that much demand for Bitcoin right now. Maybe we'll see it in the ETF inflows over the next few weeks, but we're going to need more data. Trading volume isn't enough here. Trading volume could be speculators trading left and right, and Bitcoin's price moved down yesterday. So we are going to probably need to see much more inflows for this to have a serious impact. Anyways, I rambled a good amount here, guys, but I wanted to let you guys know something. Next video, there's going to be a pretty big surprise. I hope you guys will tune in on Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got a big change coming, and outside of that as well, a part of that change as well is that we're looking to kind of expand out the channel. So if you guys are interested and you want to potentially become part of the DataDash channel, creating video content on this channel and helping maybe do research and different types of content pieces here, we are looking to expand in more faces, get more content out to you guys. Crypto and financial markets are a near 24/7 thing, and therefore we want to make sure that we are getting the right amount of content out to you guys. So if you would like to consider being a content creator, don't worry if you don't have the best mic or camera, that can be fixed. If you really love what we do here on this channel, if you love the research that we conduct and the market analysis we discuss, then I definitely recommend you guys trying to apply for the application. I'll leave a link down below in the description. It would be really awesome to see some of you guys out there who've been watching the channel over these last couple of years and doing your own market analysis, potentially considering coming on and becoming a part of the DataDash family. But that's going to be it for today's video, everyone. Thank you all so much for letting me ramble. Nonetheless, historic day for crypto, and if you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like. It's a great way to support the channel. Until the next one, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, everyone.